Hey, folks, it is 7 o'clock. This is the Enfield Planning Board. It is September 28th, 2022. I'm calling the meeting to order. We are at the Enfield Public Works Department and also on the Microsoft Teams platform. Although at this point, nobody is watching.
Meeting is being recorded.
Meeting is being recorded. Members present from my left.
Linda Jones.
Where'd Kate go?
Dan Kiley.
Get her later. David Frack,
Bill Vermeer.
Brad Rich. Tim Jennings.
Jim, and our staff member
Rob Taylor.
and our town manager.
Ed Morris.
Okay, welcome all.
David Buffet showed up.
Who? Oh,
David's on.
okay.
I'm here, David Buffet.
All right, thank you, Dave. The first order of business is public comments for anything that is not on the agenda. Any member of the public have anything that's not on the agenda? Okay. Minutes from our previous meeting, which was September 14. Does anyone have any comments, corrections?
I have some corrections.
Linda, go ahead.
Would it be better to just give my marked up paper to Whitney?
Yes, but I think it would also be good if you just kind of
Okay,
read them so that we know what your corrections and concerns were. Or are.
okay, line 49. Chair is spelled C-H-A-R, so it needs an I. Line 74. It says tracks, T-R-A-C-T-S. And I believe the word should be tracks, T-R-A-K-S. Track is T-R-A-C-K is a course or a path, and a tract is like a tract of land or
Yeah,
religious philosophy.
and what line was that?
74.
Yeah. No, track, it needs to be changed, track, T-R-A-C-K.
That's what I said.
Yes, it is, okay, I just needed to.
Yeah.
To zone in on what you were saying and look at the.
Right. Line 92. The end of the line, grand should be grant. Grant is special exception.
Right,
Line 126, tracks should be T-R-A-C-K-S. Line 144. This didn't read quite right. Mr. Rich asked if this would be a function of the state tract to determine where the aquifer is.
should be track.
It should be track, but it's
So
an awkward sentence, but I guess it
Word
is.
track could just be eliminated.
Yeah.
Maybe you need it.
That solves it.
yeah.
It is correct on page 6. Okay, on page 7, line 278. So this has to do with a comment Kate made, and she said for the record that she does not feel this way, as Mr. Cunningham stated, and I don't know which way it is. You remember?
I'm sure we can look at the video if that needs to be added. I do not have it open.
She was making a reference to his term of everybody.
Oh,
Oh, right, he said everybody online, and I wanted to make sure that people understood who were watching a video in the future, that everybody online was not there with him. I actually am a member of the planning board, so that if somebody was confused later, they wouldn't be like, oh, hey, why is she doing both?
oh, you did not feel that everybody is
No,
wondering.
I think I clarified that I was not a party to his
Right.
everybody online,
Right.
so.
Okay. 288. The sentence says that home was removed from the site and later asked to put a mobile home back on the site. I think it should say that home was removed from the site and the property owner later asked to put a
Right.
mobile
Yep.
home on the
Yes.
site. Uh, 319. Tract should be track. 339. The sentence doesn't quite hang together. On the application form, Mr. Conkey indicated by checking off that he would supply final topography and several other items that were incomplete. A timetable as to reclamation fully depleted sites within the project area.
Insert,
I think there's
insert
a
the word
series
of.
of things, and they probably should have commas. And a timetable, and a schedule of final reclamation.
Yeah.
I think that's all. Oh, one more typo. 387. He is free to continue this, as the town will not restrict it in any way. It just needs an as in there. Make it flow. That might be the end. It.
Excellent.
Did you address on line 340, the ... piece? I know that that's at the, kind of towards the end of that series of, maybe it should be a comma.
340?
Yeah, line 340. That's the final reclamation activities, including seeding mixtures, and then there's like 4 dots.
No, I didn't.
Okay.
How should it be addressed?
Well, I'm not sure how that's gonna read with the previous changes, though. Maybe it just needs to be a period, or was the 4 dots maybe something to go back to fill in? I don't know. I don't remember anything like a substance that I think is missing, so I'm comfortable making a period.
No.
You guys are, okay.
Well,
I apologize. I'm gonna put on. Tester me. Everything's.
Anything else, Linda? Anyone else have any comments or changes, suggestions on minutes?
Just one, I had one more, 346. Chair fact, if the board feels at this point the application is complete, that should be a period and not a question mark.
What line was that?
Chair fact asks if the board feels at this point the application is complete, I think.
346.
Oh, yeah,
'Cause it's-
okay,
It ends up being a statement and not a question, even though you're posing a question, it's in statement form.
you're right.
So,
I'll make a motion. We accept the minutes as amended.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Abstentions. Minutes are accepted as amended. Kate, do you have a select board report this
I
week?
do, did I open it? No, give me just a second. We had 4 public hearings, and this is the part that I'm not gonna remember as well, so I might punt this over to Ed, haha. But the first 2 substantively dealt with the property that we are going to be purchasing, which is the Shaker Hill Granite property belonging to, I'm not gonna get it right, but it's
Malls.
Malls. I know it has a formalized name. Yeah, it's an LLC. So it was dealing with entering into that agreement, I believe, and was it the financing and authorizing you?
Yes.
So we had that piece. We hired, and I'm gonna have you say the name of the architect. We authorized you to hire the architect, right?
Neely and Chase with Black River Designs.
Yep, and I'm forgetting what the 4th hearing was.
The 4th hearing was accepting money for the Lakeside Park.
Oh, right, because it was over $10,000. I knew it was something. Okay, and then really, the body of the largest portion of the meeting had to do with concerns about the parcel that the town, or parcels, there are 4 parcels the town owns at end of Johnston Drive, which have some lake frontage and beach area and concerns around that. So we heard, concerns from the folks who came, and some input. There kind of are 2 schools of thought. One is to, possibly consider the future use for a town, and the other school of thought, Dan, is to sell it. But it's great to have people come and give feedback. I've gotten a lot of private feedback where people don't necessarily want to get eaten for lunch in a field of a large room, but I think it's a very important conversation to have. And it was the very first presentation about what are we going to do, with this, because as these properties, the lifetime leases expire, the property becomes available to the town. It's not a new beach. We're not purchasing anything. This is something that we've had for quite some time. And it was purchased with the intent to have it be of use to the town. So something that, Ed is the very lucky recipient of getting to kind of help develop those thoughts and take that input. So I wanted you guys to be aware that's going to be happening. I didn't ask for a series of hotels and condos, so y'all left out. That's my report.
Okay, thank you, Kate. We,
Can I ask a question about that?
go ahead.
Do you anticipate, I guess, trying to read the tea leaves and where the selectmen are going with things on that, but do you anticipate the development or the decisions made about that parcel would be done after the master plan is completed,
I think that
particularly the recreation section?
so it's pretty easy to say yes, because the master plan target completion date is the end of this year. We'd like to be taking that to town meeting, right? So I think with everything we have going on, we're not gonna develop a beach in the middle of December in all likelihood. So those kind of discussions are gonna need to play out in multiple meetings. This was the very first introductory meeting, and while people were very up in arms on the listserv, because it was on the CIP list, you have to go through all of these processes. So you have to consider what it might cost and do all of this work up front. So, and have these discussions. So I think something is gonna happen tomorrow. Yeah.
Can I add one thing? There is a
Yeah.
lot of confusion out there, and we're trying to get the word out that
Mhm.
the CIP plan
Mhm.
does not mean it's using CIP money.
Right.
They're 2 completely separate things.
Mhm.
Every single item that's over $10,000 that the town's gonna be
Mhm.
working on goes on the CIP plan for discussion.
Mhm.
Where that gets funded comes through the CIP discussions and the budget money, and there's a whole bunch of different places that money can come from.
And as we talk about all the time, right, the accounting practices aren't exactly fun. It's not like in your household, you take a $5 bill and you give it to the kid at the candy store and it's gone, right? It has to all be accounted for. There are rules. So this is part of following, acceptable accounting practices. So if you want to have this in consideration, it has to be in there. Doesn't mean it gets spent, out of tax dollars. No, it doesn't. It doesn't mean it even has to happen. It means that you have to have it there to have the conversation.
Just one other thing, I'm not even sure it's on the CIP list.
It is.
It is,
That's how this whole thing happened.
No, it came up in CIP.
it's on.
Oh,
the
no,
list.
you're talking in the
I
document.
put it on the list. yeah,
Oh, okay.
On the first meeting.
Okay, I was gonna
Okay.
say, because it wouldn't have been a point of discussion
Right.
up front if it hadn't been there.
Just to follow up, the recreation section of the master plan, so is not It's not even been started or,
Not started yet.
yeah, and.
That's
and,
phase two.
So that's phase two. So David, just a rough idea of when the timing of that then?
I'd say probably second half of 23. It'll
Yeah.
be done.
Yeah, so, I guess what I'm suggesting is that a major recreation facility like that, and I say major in relative sense to all of the other recreation facilities we have, which aren't that many. Certainly would, the planning for that and decision-making for that would seem to benefit from having gone through the full recreation section master plan process. In as much as a lot of people are going to be involved with that. And we'll have a good deal of input. Just throwing that out there.
I think there's what's actually being discussed, right? So what was discussed and proposed in the meeting is not by no means major. By no means major. It's a very basic. And then there's what people are very worried about and they're telling their neighbors and making other people nervous about. So what was discussed, if you take time to read, the presentation and watch the video, is super basic. We're looking at, upgrading the road, obviously, so it's drivable because if we're gonna be sending people down it, and possibly some barriers so you can't drive yourself into the lake. They're not asking for
And
major.
upgrades wouldn't be widening and making this big, massive superhighway.
Yes.
Drop a little bit of gravel so you don't fall in the ruts.
Well, I don't want to,
Not a
I
plan.
don't want to
Yeah, it's not a
get into the
planning
weeds
issue.
about
No.
what we're going to do or not do. I'm just suggesting
Yeah.
that.
I think if it was major, I would be more worried. So, but certainly you can always come before the select board if you feel like, that's gonna be major. I wouldn't worry about it until it gets developed a little bit more because, there are a lot of big, hard feelings, from different parties, but I think it's important to let it go through the process of the select board.
Okay. On behalf of the master plan task force, there is a lot of raw data that we've
Yes.
taken. And should the select board want access to that data before the chapter is written,
Mhm.
come and ask. We'd be
Yeah.
happy to,
I think I know somebody who can get it for us.
okay,
Thank you.
just wanted to say,
Oh, no, I appreciate it. I think that there's a lot of good work going on here and we're gonna get a lot of good input.
mhm. Okay, next we have conceptual hearing. Laramie Farms, John DiBitetto, did I butcher that?
Yes.
No, they did fine.
Okay, and Steve Doherty. Guys want to come up to the table?
And we also brought our engineer, Carl Dubay.
Okay, Carl, come on up. I want to explain for everybody's benefit that a conceptual hearing is a first look on the applicant's vision for their project. Nothing that is said by the applicants or anything said by members of the planning board is cast in stone. It can be changed. I'm sure that the plan will evolve over the next weeks or months, however long your timetable is. And, when you make a formal application, that's when we start making formal answers. And I'm relatively confident that you have done this kind of thing before, so rather than monopolize further on the conversation, I would like to ask you to walk through your project for us.
Thank you very much.
So, I purchased the property back in 2005. It was originally conceived as a cluster, single-family home project with, primary access off of Maple Street. Um, I don't think I stood alone in my position that wasn't the perfect plan for the property. And, we presented a new plan, in fact, to the neighbors, and the abutters. And that was, much better received, and also better received by the planning board as well. We felt it was a better use for the property, as well as a better design for the property. In the years that have passed since that time, we came to the realization that there were certain impediments to moving forward. Predominantly cost. Usually that's where all good ideas get stymied.
Go to die.
And
That's when I go to die.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It was an example of that. So we sat in limbo, trying to figure out a more efficient design. So I called, who was actually a good friend of mine, who I've been working with for about 40 years, and asked him if he knew where Enfield, New Hampshire was. He happened to say, yes, I do. He's a frequent visitor to the area. And, one thing led to another. We took a drive by the site, and just did a lot of talking, and Steve said, kind of like this. And, that's what has brought us here. So I've worked with Steve Doherty on many projects closer to the Massachusetts border, predominantly the Merrimack Valley, which is where I happen to live, and we're close to where he now lives. But again, there was certain elements about this that Steve thought were intriguing, very much like I thought were intriguing approximately a dozen years ago. So one thing led to another. And Steve said, geez, I think I have the team to make this happen. Namely, in the form of Carl DeBay, who's a very creative land planner. And an architect that Steve happened to come across in his travels. Who happened to be designing a building that seemed right for the area. And what you see before you is the byproduct of all of these discussions. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to who is now really carrying the water on the project, Mr. Stephen Doherty.
Good evening. So, as Johnny said, I took a long, hard look at this site, and after seeing the old project that was approved, we know why it had come here to die. So I sat with Carl DeBay, and we come up with, a better way to try to develop this site. Part of the problems with the previous approved plan was that the zoning talks about, having frontage, building, on every lot. And because of that, and because of the topography of the hill, that particular other plan was actually, it was too costly to develop. It was just impossible to develop. So what we're proposing in this particular plan is no lot lines. We treat it as a lot, as most condominium projects are treated. And by doing that, we're able to come up with a roadway system that actually works way better with the topography, which Kyle can get into that a little later. But what I looked at here also was the length of the roadway from the previous plan. It was so long, which also made it cost prohibitive. So we were able to take the same amount of units allowable today by a zoning, which is 154 on this site, and we made it happen in these 3 buildings, and we condensed the site down. We still are working the numbers to see if the 154 can even support the site, where we're hoping it can. But we would be looking to try to get a little bit of help with some density, because of the hill, the topography, the utilities coming up, and the drainage we have to deal with. But we're hoping right now that the 154, as we show it, can support the project. Okay, so as we turn over the second page, up, all you can see on the screen, all we did was we blew up that section. So I'll let Kyle take this from here. When we come back to the buildings, I'll talk.
So, hi, my name is Carl. We're engineers, surveyors, landscape architects, planners, all that, out of London area. So we do a lot of apartment projects like this, everything from high-end luxury all the way to workforce housing and everything in between. And I've done quite a bit of work with Mr. Doherty. And so we work really, really well together and very successful. So on this site, we would have a road that Route 4 is on the left. That would all be jurisdicted by DOT. We would do whatever DOT told us to do and the traffic studies and all the things that DOT would want for us to take care of over there. And we'd put in a private road, 24 feet with curbing and all that, basically to your standards. And then we'd also have a driveway up where the water tower is that you guys have, and have that available, that whole area available for maintenance and whatnot. And then we continue on the road, and we would have that road system going all the way up the hill, very similar to the previous design, but it would not be a town road. It'd be a private, basically a fully maintained private development. So the town doesn't have to be getting up there and maintaining all that stuff and all the costs that go with that. The other thing we did was, and Stephen can talk about the buildings a little bit later, but these are higher end building. They meet all the new codes. The old building that you had before had some code issues, but this building, has underground parking garage. It has, it's a very good look, and Steve will go through that. The other thing that we wanted to do is make sure we had full NFPA access, not only the NFPA, design of the building itself and code and everything, and 13R fire suppression and everything else that you would, but also the elevators, the underground parking, the access all the way around the buildings. We wanted to make sure that there were no dead ends. The old plan had a lot of dead end parking lots and things like that, just because they had to, because they were forced into this one building per lot scenario on a town road, and it was sort of a puzzle they were solving. But when they solved that puzzle, they made it the site work very messy. So this is very efficient and very safe, because we can now get around the buildings. There are no dead ends on any parking. We're actually producing on 2 spaces per unit on the parking in total. And the access road does not have any parking on it. It doesn't have any stuff penetrating into that access road other than landscaping and curbing and sidewalks. So that helps us a lot. So it's a very attractive development. The other thing we did was put the same density on a less of a footprint so that we can leave more woods. And that's always a good thing. As a matter of fact, we're calculating the wetland impacts on this project, and I think we're actually less than the wetland impacts on the previously approved project. So all these things, when we come back, we'll have these line items with check boxes, and I hope to be able to put a lot of green checks on these boxes that if the boards and the commissions and committees are saying, well, what about this? What about that? What about open space? What about the trees? What about buffers? What about sewer? What about water? What about safety? What about ambiance, aesthetics? And we want to make sure that our plan, the new plan, is much better and more efficient in many, many different ways that the town would expect us to perform on. And if anything, this is almost like an acid test. It's a test on performance to say, all right, we came in here and did some really nice units. They're all 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, no 3 bedroom units, by the way. Let's do a stand-up job that, the town could be proud of. So that was our task to do. And we started the planning process. We started, LiDAR topo and all the other things that you would normally expect. We know that this will require a DES AOT permit, alteration of terrain permit. And the AOT permit criteria, as you probably know, those regulations just get tougher and tougher every year. They're totally changed from they were when the previous permit was issued. Everything got more difficult. Everything got more expensive. But, the treatment and the drainage, everything is put on steroids. This plan will actually deliver on that very, very well. So all the DES permits will have to update, obviously, and redo to all their new standards. So the wetland permit, the AOT permit, sewer extension permit, DOT permit we talked about. But, all that stuff behind in the back kitchen, we're, grinding away at. We still want to produce an attractive plan that really works and that you guys can be proud of. So once we get up the road, past the water tower up to the crown, then we run along the topo. We're working with the land, and you'll see the grading plans on this, the next round. But this layout here that our planning division put together is reflective indeed of the topo that's out there. So once we get to the top building, we're actually at, 1% and 2% for the main road. It's nice. We do have to get around the buildings, and we do have the garage parking, so there's going to be a 12-foot, differential there, but you see that a lot in high-end, apartment complexes and that type of thing. Everything will be integrated with walkways. The old plan had these little sheds, these long sheds of parking. I don't know what they would be called, but this will all integrated in the building. So out of each building, I think out of the 54 units, there's 34, 36 parking spaces that are protected in a garage. You drive in, you walk over to the elevator, you go up to your unit. It's just really nice. I think you're going to get a lot of great people that want to live here and actually be a part of the community. So the 1 and 2 bedroom splits, Stephen can actually start talking about a little bit, give you some flavor of the building design that we have here, and what the introduction would be, the Q would be the old building that you had was more of a lodge look. And we've tried to integrate some of that lodge look in the area. You still see some of the balconies that were carried over from the old plan. You still see the roof lines. There's some other features there that Steve's excited about. And, a stone look on the bottom where the garages are. And also in like an urban farmhouse look that they call it. Some of the architects down in the Boston area are going to more of an urban farmhouse. You see that a lot in the cities, in Vermont even. So you're sort of in between. So you're going to be seeing more character on these buildings. And Stephen did work with the fire department here to work as close as he could with the zoning on the height limitations and everything else. So I'll just hand it back to Steve, but if you have any questions on the site or anything like that, I'd be happy to answer them. We look forward to working on a project. We love what we do. We think it's a great site. And we've basically been told to, give the town quality, high quality, something they can be proud of. So kind of excited about coming back to you as soon as we can. I know that we might have to get some applications over to ZBA. We're working on a package right now. There might be some relief that we may need to actually produce on this. And we'll be working with staff on that and probably come back to you as well as we work through the plan details. You're going to want to see a lot of stuff, and we're going to provide it to you for input. And eventually we do have to go to ZBA, I think, on a few items. And then we'd have to come back to the planning board, obviously, with the, preliminary acceptance and on to final. We hope to be there, shortly.
Ooh, that was a lot.
I try to talk as fast as I could.
Okay, so basically how the building is set up is 54 units. We've got 28 one-bedroom units, and we have 26 two-bedroom units. This is a 3.5-story building, and I didn't work directly with the fire chief, but I did take from the ordinances the heights required. I expect to meet with the fire chief after I get input from you folks. But the key for the fire department was the height to the from the surface to the soffit. We were able to manage to do that on the parking lot side at 25'9" and still be at 3.5 stories. And then on the opposite side, which is a little deeper, I think the maximum height was 32, and we've met that criteria as well. And I hope to sit with the fire chief and hope to get his blessing and know everything was fine with that end of that. But the units, the 2-bedroom units, I'm pretty excited myself about them, because on the second floor units, have lofts in them. Oh, the third floor units are 3.5 story. The third floor unit has lofts in them. So if you were to look on, your bottom left corner of your page, you're gonna see, the two-bedroom loft lower level. And that gives you kind of a layout of what we're looking at. A bedroom, bathroom, kitchen area, living, dining, and a balcony. Every unit has a balcony. And then when you go upstairs to this, same unit, you have another bedroom upstairs with another bathroom. But what I like especially about that unit is there's also a balcony in that unit. And how that balcony works, if you go back to the first, the elevation, the colored elevation, and you see, the two white blocks up there that Rob is showing you now, those are your balconies from that third floor.
Oh,
So that's gonna be kind of cool. That's actually wicked cool.
It's
Okay.
like the ski lodges.
Okay, and as Kyle mentioned, we have 33 spaces in the garage. Yeah, but we were managed to do 2 spaces per unit. So there's 33 inside and the balance will be outside. So we've accommodated that as well. It's an elevated building. The 1-bedroom units at like 690 feet. And then if you add in the balcony, you're a little over 700 feet. So we didn't add any balcony square footage in any of the living space units. Okay, and we kept it all down to 2 units and 1 units to keep the control of the size of the families that are coming in. Like Kyle mentioned, it kind of looks like a barn when you look at it. When you go to the front, it has that barn look where the hay lofts, where you put the pulley there and pull the hay up. I've actually renovated 3 barns into homes. I actually had been labeled and known as the barn whisperer, if anybody's interested. But, so I kind of have a thing about barns. I like barns. So we kind of wanted to make this kind of a barn looking building. Okay. And it's pretty nice, and the garages will have doors on them, so it'll all be enclosed. It'll all have, exhaust inside there. So it'll be good for at least 33 cars during the winter. And also in front of the parking spaces, if you look at the bottom right of that page, the purple color, there's gonna be like storage bins in front of each of those spaces. So we'll have some storage also available on the site.
It's for sporting goods and bikes. and
Yeah, for
all the stuff
bicycles
that-
or whatever, And then that's pretty much it. The other pages are just the elevations, the cutout of how it works. We put a lot of time and effort into designing this particular building. We had the criteria of the 27 feet, the 32 feet. So Kyle had to make sure everything worked with the parking, so everything worked together with that. And it come out pretty nice. And then if you go to the, beyond these, we're gonna come to the old design. Okay? And in the old design, if you look at this roadway, we have pretty much, it's the same roadway coming up. We had a waiver before at the 10%, it's still gotta be 10%. When we get up the top, it all changes. But where we're stopping is, you see where the cul-de-sac is now, that's where we have the loop that comes around. That's the end of the development at this time. So those other buildings in that other section of roadway is no longer needed. We managed to keep all the buildings tucked down below, 54 units in a building, to get us to that, or whatever, what was it, 154?
Yes.
So whatever that math is, I'm not a math guy.
So these are the old plans, just to make sure you guys know that. we said
Yeah,
old
this is the
design.
old design.
Just so you can have a sort of we don't want to be obsessed with comparing plans or anything, but I know someone may say, oh yeah, no, I was there, I was on the board back then, or I wasn't, what are you guys talking about? So.
Right.
No.
Oh, were you here?
So
Yeah,
this is the old design, it's very
Yeah.
complex, and, we would be, hopefully, doing a much better job than, it was a nice design at the time, and we always look back at old designs and figure out things, working with new codes and everything, and make sure that, we can make it work, so that's just as a comparison, standpoint, that's all.
so the key thing for me, that we would have to shake out somehow is like, we need to make this like one lot, not have
Mhm.
all these lots, because that I think perpetrated that last design,
Mhm.
which made it impossible to develop.
Yeah.
And we're very close on the 154, if it's gonna work. So we're waiting to get some more information from the town on tie-in fees, current use, all that other stuff. The other minutia that comes involved with this to determine if this is gonna be a viable project. But density, an increase in density would be helpful. Our competitors that are in Lebanon and Hanover, I mean, it's the density over there and the height restrictions they have are really lax. So we're hoping to see if we can help with that. The height doesn't bother me. I think we got the height under control. And that's kind of where I think I'm coming from right now. And then would like to get some input from you folks to say, what do you like? What don't you like? Where should we be going from here? So that when we come back again, I'd like to come back for probably another conceptual meeting with some input from you folks, so that we can say, okay, we're headed the right direction. This is kind of what I'm looking for, and hopefully we can make this happen.
Okay, I'll go first. I got the chair. I guess that's my prerogative. I was looking at the town tax map earlier today, yesterday, and looking at our zoning regs and trying to figure out what you might be doing. And the bottom line conclusion that I came to is that you've got currently 2 lots from a tax point of view. Is that right?
Yep, 77 acres
Yeah.
total, I think.
And multifamily dwellings, which I think we've called condos multifamily.
Mhm.
1 principal building per lot.
Correct.
So what I was thinking was that you could put in a multifamily dwelling with whatever density you needed, as long as it was on an individual lot of currently 1/2 acre, because you'll be on town water and sewer. So what I was anticipating that you guys might be thinking of doing is rearranging lot lines and subdividing, so you would have more than just the 2 lots that you have, and making those lots large enough so you could put in whatever density of occupancy you thought was what you wanted to do. So there would be a reasonable upper limit, but I don't think the limit.
This particular plan here
Yeah,
shows, I believe, it was 6 lots,
oh,
Yeah, that was
okay,
it.
okay?
The old one did, yeah.
And because of the way the lots were designed, it gave restrictions on sloping and roadways.
Right.
So you see the 2 lower, in the center of that page, you're gonna see 2 units that are on the low side. The hill, the top of the page is the high side,
Right.
and it runs down this way. And because of them going down there, this site as it stood, it was a 50,000 cubic yard import, okay? And it made it almost economically unfeasible to develop. This plan followed exactly what you were interpreting, okay? And because of that, we don't know how to reconfigure the lots to make them into lots, because we still have to have the ones on the upper side have land. Okay, so that's when we said, let's try to see if we could wipe out, get a variance or whatever it is we might need to wipe out the lot lines, okay? And, but still give us the current density of the 2 per acre. and then try to increase that a little if we could to make it, you know, more economically feasible to develop. So because of that lot line scenario, that's what made this plan. And because of that, that plan was you can't build it.
Mhm.
I mean, you could, but you would never
Right,
survive
they
it.
have like 3 buildings there at the very end,
Yeah.
go way out.
Right.
If you're in the last building, you have to go through the parking lot,
You drive into
the
everybody's
first
parking lot.
building, and you gotta go
Right.
through the parking lot of the second.
Right.
building. It's just kind
Yeah.
of crazy.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It's a great way to run a small
And
town.
then they ran the lot lines, that played a little trick here, you know, they ran a lot line so it would have frontage on a current class 5 existing road, so.
Mhm.
To get around that, but then it just forced some kind of like wacky planning, to get to that point, because it looked like they didn't really want to ask for that variance. And I think that, you know, if we put in a responsible variance package together and, you know, work with the boards on that, I think it makes a lot of sense, but we still need to go through the 5 criteria and everything.
Mhm.
But I think you hit it on the head, but what the
Yeah.
zoning was asking for, because that's what,
Right.
that's
Yeah.
exactly what you were just describing, you know? And it just makes it impossible for that site to be
Right.
developed like that. That's why it's still sitting here, you know?
And that necessitated forcing that access drive to be a town road and forcing the town
Right.
to,
To take over the road.
Right.
yeah, kind of accept it and then
Right.
maintain it forever. It just,
Right.
it was just kind of an awkward
Yeah.
position to propose, really.
And the other thing about having it as a town road, now you'd have to have certain setback requirements, like
From the
front
road. Yeah.
setback,
From the road.
which puts those units further down the hill, which just became a nightmare.
Yeah.
Okay, to develop.
And the impervious
Oh, yeah.
surfaces
Of
all of a
course.
sudden became a
opens
big
wide
issue with
open.
that, with this
Yeah,
plan.
Yeah,
all
ruins
the
the
way
natural
through.
space
Right.
too.
All the
yeah.
way through, it was a problem.
Could I kind of give you an idea? So I checked in with Ed today because from, you know, a select board point of view, we have a lot of work in this town that we've been doing. Master Planning Task Force is working very, very hard, and I think as a selectman, I feel that we need to do some very distinct goal setting, to kind of guide the town a little bit more. And during COVID, we had been doing a nice job with goal setting and moving the ball forward. During COVID, a lot of those things went to like, let's try to stay alive and not die. So we need to be having those conversations as we look at the master plan when it gets finalized and talking about what our goals are, right? Is it to increase density in the downtown area? Is it to make sure that development is on water and sewer, right? Is it to maybe not own a road? We don't want to, I don't know the answers, but I did want to just point out that we need to be looking at that master planning outcome and setting those goals. So that's kind of my select board hat on that piece. I know ours, and we've talked a lot about how our zoning, sometimes our zoning had good intentions and you accidentally do something terrible, where you think I think where people had very good intentions and you find out the outcome afterwards is not great. So the next step in the process, beyond just getting around to recreation, is to say, how could our zoning be better and serve our people better? So we have that hopefully coming up as well.
Anyone else?
and what we've also done here was we kept, I know that in the past, there was Maple Street, is that what we have up there, that the people up there are a little upset with everything coming that way. So we kept
Yeah.
we kept away from that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think there was some forestry, as a select boardman I've dealt with, there was some forestry that was done that drained water onto those properties and made them even more unhappy, and there's nowhere to take it off their property up there. So every once in a while, they want to harm us. And I'm like, whoa, we didn't do it. So I think those kind of, just as you're looking at it, be very mindful of how things are shedding. Because there are very strong feelings that are still held to this day by some of those property owners on, you know, what they feel like is water that suddenly landed on their property.
Jim?
Jim, could you, not Jim, Rob, could you, really briefly describe the zoning for that size lot in this area?
It's in the R1. And as you know, R1 is 1 acre minimum except for water, sewer, municipal. It does allow for the half acre.
So you could subdivide that, but
Yeah, to create, but we do allow multifamily, so that's what they're hoping to take advantage of, multifamily in the R1. Dwelling unit, that's the limitation that we're bumping up against. They have 77 acres, multiply that by 2 for 2 houses. Or 2 dwelling units per acre. That's how they're getting it to their 154.
Well, I don't understand why that equation comes in. Because I don't see where we tie total acreage into number of dwelling units that are allowed in a multifamily. I mean, if we did that, I don't think a lot of the, multifamilies that we have in town now would would have been allowed.
Well, CB, there's no acreage in the city, so.
Right. Yeah, true.
CB, it's whatever the land will support,
support.
so.
But CB only goes back so many feet.
Correct, this land, this where
This
they're
plan
talking
is
about.
in
This is
R1.
not- It's not CB, it's R1.
So the,
The one on top of Dry Bridge Hill is in the CB, which is why they could do that with that lot.
okay. But, and again, I don't want to get too far into the weeds here, but do you have a sense of what variance, would be required? And
Yes, it would be, zoning ordinance section 4 or IV. It would be the R1 district. And there's certain criteria there under 401.1. There's A through, it goes all the way down to Z, I think, or it's close to it, A through U, but there's certain subsections in there that have some limitations that we would be looking at. On that, in there. So there's, under, IV-401.1.U. It would say no lot shall have more than one dwelling or principal building, so that would be that one section that we just talked about. There might be a few others, also. But you're actually right there, because under section O, it says multifamily dwellings are allowed as long as the planning board approves it under a site plan.
Right.
Or,
Mhm.
and or a subdivision plan.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's all good. It's all allowed. It's just how you get there.
Exactly.
And if we're gonna be having the same amount of open space and
Right.
conservation area and that type of thing, it
Right.
kind of makes sense on that end. We still have the same amount of wooded areas that we would still be able to set aside.
Yeah, I mean, under the zoning, you'd have to have 3 weird looking lots
Mhm.
to have the 3 buildings.
Right.
And I was
It's
just-
basically the
I
thing.
was just
correct.
saying, we stopped.
You'd have lot line adjustments in order to have 3 lots there, in order to have the 3 buildings with
Mhm.
main buildings
I get-
on them.
I get that.
But it would make the lots look pretty weird. Because the middle one would probably be this way with a corner on it.
Oh, it'd be a
and
funky thing.
Oh,
really.
It would be a funky thing to
So-
do.
So the variance that they will be asking for is to take these 2 lots and turn it into one?
Turn it into one and be able to have 3 buildings on 1 lot.
Is that
Is
clear?
pretty much
Correct.
what the variance would
That
be.
makes sense.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Are you showing anywhere the lot lines for the 2 lots that are currently there?
No, right now, we don't have that shown, but, it's, like someone said, it's on a tax map. I have a copy of it,
I have
actually.
it.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
Okay, I have that already.
It's probably on there.
This one and this one? I'm not
Yeah,
sure. We have
it's
3 lots?
split almost in half,
Right.
42 acres on one.
So is what you're showing there now
Mhm.
the total of what you wish to use in your numbers?
If you look at the yellow
Yeah.
outline,
You can see that on
Yeah,
the screen.
that's
There's
the
two
whole
lots.
73.
Yeah, so it's 2 lots, one of 35 acres and one of 42 acres. So we would merge those together.
Right.
And then, do what we normally do anyhow under your regulations. This is more of an administrative item, really.
But I see you say that's future phase, but if it's already counted into this development, how can that be your future phase?
If Mr. Doherty's talking about, if we were gonna ask for more units, then we would have to ask for another variance on that piece. But our goal was to try to, if we were gonna have more units, is to still, use the same areas. So still give away on a conservation easement, the wooded areas. So in other words, we'd have a better design on top of the old design and not use any more area than they did. Actually, we might even be using less.
So you qualified this time around, and at some point in the future, you may come back to the zoning and say, hey, we want to put another building out there.
We'd have to earn it, but yeah, we'd have to show, and usually the state would want to make sure that we're reasonable. What they call reasonable is, can you perform to the new DES standards for training, treatment and everything else, which we would, by the way.
Right.
So, you know, at least we would have it set up so that we could do that if we had to. This design, I think, and I'm a little biased because our people did it, but we have a really good team. They're very creative and we've done a lot of these, and we think that this is going to be a higher quality product on all aspects, on the same footprint that you already had pre-approved. And could it have more density? Yes, and it would still look great. It would look like these 3 buildings here is the same number of units you already had pre-approved. We could put 3 more there. I'm just throwing it out, like you could double the density and still be on the same footprint that we were on before, and you would meet all the new regulations and all the new codes. And, you know, you'd have a good stock there of 1 and 2 bedroom, very nice rentals. No 3 bedrooms.
Well, an observation about the zoning ordinance, we're in the process of finishing up a master plan, which we hope to have the first couple sections done this year and adopted sometime in the spring, I suppose.
Give or take.
Yeah, and then that's gonna inform future amendments to the zoning ordinance, which might actually be almost a complete rewrite. So by the time you get around to wanting to add 3 more units up there, probably gonna have a whole different regulatory framework to work with. Because we recognize our zoning ordinance, at least in my opinion, is totally deficient in trying to deal with a project like this. That said, just so I get a little more understanding about the concept here, these are condos,
Oh, they're apartments,
they're apartments.
yes.
For lease apartments, right? I think you had the word condo out there at the beginning when you.
Oh, I
started.
did? Oh,
Yeah,
I'm
I think,
sorry.
yeah. That's
They've
right.
gotta still be, well, they're like a condo, but these are gonna be apartments.
Right, we have nothing in town of this scale, you know, the closest thing we have are condos, so I think for many people, when we think of something big, we might think of condos.
Yeah,
But, yeah, I'm from.
and I built a lot of condos too.
Yeah,
This
but-
particular one is
You know, there's
apartments. yeah.
townhouse, there's a condo,
Right.
sometimes they get used interchangeably,
Right.
these are definitely apartments.
Will this be on town water and sewer?
Yes, it is. That's town water and sewer.
One of the things that we see across the state is any type of, you know, multifamily development at a high end or even at workforce.
Mhm.
They really want to see a good access on a state road. That's number one. They really want to see sewer and they really want to see water.
Mhm.
And if we can do open space and conservation easements and all that, that's even a bonus and it has to look good. So those are the things that it's hard to jurisdict. It's hard to write a zoning ordinance that talks about that. Some of those are easy. You can just say it shall be on a state road. It shall have blah, 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 blah.
Right.
And that basically eliminates a lot of the stuff in
Right.
town, because some people will say, geez, you know, you can do this everywhere. Or no, actually, if you do it as a process of elimination, and you put in some other criteria in there on density, on open space ratios and everything, usually a town can very, very successfully actually manage, okay, this is gonna be our nice 1 and 2 bedroom, high-end apartment complex right there. There might be 1 or 2 others, but it's not gonna, they're gonna go perpetuate all over town because
Right.
they'd never be able to meet all the criteria that we would
Yeah.
set forth. They wouldn't be so strict as it's spot zoning, but it would be very, very, a very high hurdle to make. And that way, by process of elimination, you know, so most of the towns do it that way. I know Hanover has spent a lot of time making sure of that, and some of the other towns in the state. Londonderry's done the same thing.
Right.
Wyndham,
Can we back to spot zoning in the 60s where you said this is where trailer parks can be? And that's what happened. Was one of
and
them
a lot of
was
times,
on the Enfield line and the other was on the Lebanon line.
a
And they were
planning
both
board,
together.
usually a planning board would actually want to see that, and we do that a lot. It's very easy to do once we have, you know, with the GIS and say, all right, well, take us through a quick and dirty process elimination, just take out big tracts of land already that just aren't on the state road, aren't on sewer, aren't on water, and don't have the open space to balance off and all of that. And all of a sudden,
Yeah.
you'll see that it'll come down to, a handful or even less.
Exactly.
I think people want to see that. They just want to have a gut feel on
Mhm.
where you would go with that, especially in the master plan process.
Have you talked to Liberty Utilities about the right of way for those power lines?
No, but what we're showing under the power lines, and it's very common, we do this a lot with the utility companies. We're not showing any buildings under the easement. We would
Right.
show some parking, but that parking, we figured out the grading so that the parking is indeed under the easement, but that's allowed through a special, functional, it's a legal document. But we want to make sure that we stay away from the infrastructure that's already out there. So the poles and all that, we've already located where this design works around those poles. We don't want to be touching those poles. We don't want to be near them for a lot of reasons.
Sure.
But that's why that building is rotated a little bit. The parking area is still circuitous.
Right.
You still can get around both ways, two-way traffic and everything, and work within that easement there for the
Yeah.
parking that's under there.
They got a pretty wide easement, don't they? Is it 70 feet or 75?
Oh, yeah, I mean, we see them there. We see them 150 feet
Yeah.
wide even for future,
Right.
whatever. And we stayed away from the water tower. I wanted to put a building there next to it and Steve said no. But, I mean, we could do it. It would be a squeeze. It's just, we wanted to stay away from there.
It's not.
You're probably gonna have to have
Yeah,
booster
well, the problem is,
pumps
you
anyways.
would have
because
to
of the-
paint a mural on the tank.
Right.
But to your
Guy who
point,
Trees.
Paint that guy who swims
Yeah.
inside of it for us.
Oh, yeah.
yeah, but we would have probably a booster.
You'd have to have
All that would
boosters
be-
for each building in order to get the sprinkler system because
Yeah.
it's,
There would be some supplementary work
Yeah.
on that, but
Because
that
of
would
the-
be,
yeah, at the
Done
third floor,
through-
you're probably at the same elevation as that tank is.
yeah, we're close and
Yeah.
all those calculations and testing that have to be
Right.
done. And,
Yeah.
we have a real fire protection engineer with the
Yeah.
architectural team to prove all that out with
Yeah.
your water department and everything.
Rob?
I was just gonna say, I would point out, given our experience a couple weeks ago, this would definitely rise, I think. You guys agree?
To the,
regional impact.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
So we would, I think, just come right out of the gate.
Oh,
Mhm.
Yeah.
Why?
Excuse me?
Why?
Population,
Because of the size and the proximity to the Lebanon line.
I would say, yeah, because this
Yeah.
has the potential to increase our population. So if you were to take a guess at like how many people you think would inhabit if you filled every unit, I know like you might end with one person, two person. Do you have a rough idea what you think based on your past experience?
I think it's gonna be like maybe 2.5 as an average, maybe 2 to 2.5.
almost 500. Thereabouts.
385 to 500, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just, that's a substantial increase to our town. I don't want to be a jerk and say impact fee, but I'm gonna say it up front because I'd rather be no, and I don't necessarily think you need one, but I want to say it now so that it's out on the table so that we are discussing, is there an impact that requires it? They're gonna be plowing their own space, but just having those considerations because someone's gonna bring it up down the road later, right? And I don't know what this town has done in the past. I know even on small projects, sometimes people decry it just to try to get it themselves.
So section 9-900 is impact fees, but we don't even know how you would jurisdict
Yeah, I don't
them.
know either. I'm
I
just,
don't either.
And I even pointed it out to ourselves. We said to be determined, to be verified, because
Yeah.
I couldn't read, I couldn't figure them out. So,
no,
But we'll have those discussions. I'll talk with my staff and we'll talk with the school
Yeah.
district.
Well,
and
can I
other
make a
people.
motion that we have no impact fees? Did I get a second, Johnny?
but also,
those are your that board versus this board now.
but to your point on regional impact,
Yeah.
regional impact, it's not really something to be totally afraid of. The regional impact is through the RSA. I think there's 7 criteria.
Right.
Most of them would be applicable. We
Yeah.
have to address those. And then the staff would actually notify the surrounding towns and the planning commission, just the
Upper
regional
Valley
planning
Lakes
commission.
SPV.
Right.
And then we would, we'd have all the information
Yeah. Yeah.
available and ready
Yeah.
anyhow. We're not afraid of that.
And-
But typically, if
it's a good thing to do with good neighbors.
Right,
and
something
we
that you would
have a great
trigger at some
relationship
point.
With these towns.
we notify everybody and have our information
Basically
there.
giving them a butter status.
Well, in most of, most
Nothing
of
more for the money.
the Upper Valley Lake Sunapee.
Yeah.
on projects like this have just been a letter. In the case of a lot of those letters, it was in favor because of the need for
Mhm.
workforce housing.
Mhm.
So you'd have to say, yeah, Canaan has as much of an impact as Lebanon does, probably.
Mhm.
From a mileage standpoint, so probably as an abutter would be the town of Canaan, the town of Lebanon, town of Hanover.
It's just to be
Hanover's
clear
right
though, that
It's
the
right
regional impact is different than impact fees. We all know.
Right,
that.
I agree.
right.
I'm just saying regional impact, to be considered as.
I'm
an
sorry,
abutter.
and Linda's had her hand up. Sorry, I
Yeah, go
interrupted.
ahead.
Linda's your neighbor.
Yes.
He knows.
So am I.
I
That's
wondered
true.
how long the road is, to the loop past the third unit. What's the length of that? I didn't see it in here.
Yeah, we did turn that one on.
Actually, I might be able to find that for you.
What I'm thinking is that in town, for roads over a certain length, there needs to be a
What is
second
this? This
exit.
is
Yeah, 2,500.
2,900.
How much?
The old design that was approved was over 3,200 feet.
Yeah,
was
they
30
didn't, they haven't gotten a
3,200 feet.
variance for that yet.
Yeah, or it would have been it might have been a waiver of
Right.
subdivision or site regs or something,
Right.
but it was 3,200 feet.
As I recall, I'm not sure whether it was the first, second, or third plan.
Oh, the first,
The first
it was 21.
Well, what I'm interested in
2,100
now
feet.
is the law
Yeah.
that we have now, and whether you need to have a second access road for safety.
When you say law, because I'm not familiar with this, are you saying a state law or?
They was, because of,
Town rights.
Oh,
Town
okay, you
reg,
said law,
the
so I
town
was
reg.
thinking, okay, so it's a regulation.
there was a second in the original Laramie Farms 56 units. You're right, there was a second road that was not a
Public, it was a
public
So
road.
they
It was
doubled it.
basically a gated so that the fire department could get up there if they had to.
right, and that's in the
Yeah.
subdivision regulations.
Yeah,
But if we didn't have a town road, it would technically would not apply, but still the fire chief is the jurisdictional authority.
right.
So what we did in this design is if you come up to the top of the hill there, under the power easement, in that area, you can almost see it. You can go to the next slide. You can see that is inherent in our design is a loop, so you have
Yeah.
a full.
Right.
Mhm.
I'm looking at here.
Oh, yeah, so if you
Yeah.
can pan that thing over so that you can see the right side, so actually, it does create a loop all the way around outside, it's almost like a big loop, so. There's kind of another way, to go both ways, we did that on purpose as well. So we have a nice full clean,
Presume the fire chief will look at things like the turning radius for his trucks.
oh, yes,
So,
yeah,
Um,
those are all, that would be compliant, I'm gonna check them, but you wouldn't put a fire truck through the garage is under the building, but everywhere else a fire truck needs to be able to go and
Yeah, we
turn.
just paid for that, so.
So we did 24-foot wide aisles with 10 by 20 parking spaces. So in some sections of your regs, you have 9 by 18, others you say 10 by 20.
Right.
And then you have some
Little
other
we
things
know.
allows.
It's 10
So we
by
just said,
20.
how with that, we'll go full width out 24 feet, because that's really what a fire
Right.
chief would want
Yeah.
to see. And then the
Right.
10 by 20 big
Mhm.
spaces.
Yeah.
So we just did both at the same time, and because we didn't want to have to argue, and that's pretty much what we should do here anyhow.
Raise a point that's gonna need to be studied quite closely, and that's the water supply capacity for the town. 150 units represents a huge draw on the water supply. We do have limitations that you may or may not be aware of. So I think that will need to be an engineering study that is done.
Do you have a consultant that's already working on your water supply? That's a go-to
We
consultant?
sure do.
Yeah, we can get you that information.
Yeah.
Usually we'd ask and work with that consultant instead of bringing something else in and someone you don't like, or
We've
whatever.
just done a pretty extensive project looking at both our sewer and our water.
Yeah.
So we have some really good details and some plans that are laid out to improve anyways, like the 1903 water pipes have to go.
What I'm pointed out is we have the existing wells are barely adequate to cover the present customer base. And one well that we drilled that would have solved that problem has a very high awareness problem and a radionuclide problem. So it can only be used intermittently. So that's the issue that.
Well, phase one of our water plan, which was approved, takes care of some of that, and that was
Right.
the,
Drilling.
yeah. the
That
drilling
if you
part.
find a well, and if it has the yield,
Right.
do we have that?
We're working on it.
Yeah.
The engineers are working on it, right?
Well, I mean, if they drilled a well and tested it?
Not yet, I don't.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's a 50-50 proposition.
Yeah.
So anyway, that needs to be dealt with. The sewer access would be where, off Maple Street?
Yes,
Yes.
the same as the old approved design, and I think we can actually simplify that as well. I think they had two mains coming down transverse through all the wetlands and the site down and through the woods, coming to one point and then
Yeah.
coming into Maple and rebuilding a piece of that to the first manhole. But I think we can simplify that with this particular design now.
If you want some pretty good quality information, the water and sewer, analysis
Yeah.
pieces are on the website already. I know there's more data available beyond that you will have, but it's a quick pull.
Yeah, we can get you anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's, because we've gone through a very detailed project.
And the sewer capacity is not an issue.
No, not at all.
Where
Is it the same consultant doing both or?
Yeah.
Do you know who the name out top of your head is would be?
I don't know the consultant that did that. We're working with Horizon Engineers right now to
Horizon, yeah.
Okay, all right.
do the actual
Yeah.
work. So.
Right.
What's your plan for the area you've logged off?
So I can speak to that. We had logged off the area that was limited to the original plan. Yeah, whatever's on the list. I had given him that plan and showed him.
And yeah,
Yes, yes, so the logging was limited to that.
So we should be all set then.
Predominantly.
What page are you?
The last page, the original design, Linda?
Oh, the last.
Yeah.
oh, actually, you see
Wait
the,
a minute.
you see the plan that's up here now?
That one.
That plan. That should be
No.
the third from the
Not
back,
that one.
third from the back,
Or from the back, it says old design on the top of it
and,
too.
and that work is completed. There's no more work.
Cindy. Third from the back.
Got the 6 or 7 blocks.
One, two,
Or
three.
fourth.
Or 4.
Oh, yeah.
It's fourth.
Four, yeah, I'm sorry, yeah.
I'll tell
No,
you what you told me, I've learned from your logging. I've learned that my property has great views. It's right above you.
Don't say that out loud with the people who will tax you.
I'm not even gonna charge it.
I see view tax.
No,
Wait a minute.
cha-ching, is your, my taxes are getting
I
cheaper,
saw
how about
a
yours?
light coming through the trees.
Yeah.
And I couldn't figure it out because no light ever came through those trees. And I went to the stone wall and I'm looking out over acres of clear cut. Yeah, I know you're not gonna say it was clear cut.
But they, from my humble opinion, I think they did a nice job. We didn't get one call from a disgruntled neighbor.
Yeah,
Yep, and, yeah, and they were very methodical and, kept me in the loop, even when I couldn't be there.
so now that I'm on this, where do you have any property out there that has not been logged?
As I said, this was the template that he used. And I told him to, restrict his efforts to the plan before him.
You mean this last square here? That,
So when I'm referring to the area that shows,
Oh, the building area?
yes, the
Okay,
building
the
area.
building area.
The building area, that's
Oh,
what
I
I'm
see,
referring to.
okay, yeah,
so this,
he didn't do this.
We didn't do this whole project, we
Right,
just did
okay.
along.
I
the-
told
them
him
the
basically
building.
what he cleared was, if you look at that plan, the limits of construction on this plan.
Exactly. He did do a landing area down at Maple Street, because obviously you have to build the
Right.
fence, right? But that was about it.
And pretty much, if we went in, we would be clearing, pretty much the same areas.
what do you mean by that?
Well, the area that John cut is this area, the limit of construction coming up the roadway. We would be coming up this same roadway. This, we're keeping, our proposal is to keep the entrance roadway the way it is. And when it gets to the top, we change it just a little bit. So the entrance from Route 4 all the way up is the same line that plan is.
I see.
And then when it gets to the top of the hill and it starts to plane out, then we went more linear with that roadway. And it's, and then we kept all the buildings on the upside of the road. Okay,
I'm looking at our fund water plan. You'll probably want to take a look, starting at, particularly at page 6. And into 7, it addresses some of the first phase and pieces that are very poor. I don't know if we'll be sticking exactly to the phases, but since they are along the way to what you're gonna be developing, it might be interesting to look and have a discussion with Ed about where we're performing the work and kind of what timeline we have.
Now DOT is gonna be doing a $12 million upgrade to Route 4 over Dry Bridge Hill. So is that gonna impact your entryway there on Route 4?
So. Is
They're gonna
it
give you room
beyond,
anyways.
is it beyond us?
They may have to put turning lanes or something for that many
Was that,
cars to come in and out
was
of
the
there.
DOT work, was it beyond us?
No, it goes right past.
It goes past it.
Yeah, our traffic engineer, the first thing that he would be doing is, working with the DOT, talking to the district and saying, oh, what's going on? What do you guys have for plans? How do we mesh into their plans? And then they have to do a full traffic study after the scoping session, which the town is invited to, obviously. And that, all those calculations would be done. DOT would force us into all the warrant analysis. If something's warranted, left turn warrant or a shoulder widening warrant, or, you know.
They might
and
make you
split
like
lane
put
warrant.
something across town too while they're at it.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
that would be all that would be required.
like,
Don't get me started.
Rob, that's
Yeah, Jake's, poor Jake.
initial.
Don't let him
study
run.
that we presented to the town, right? Here pretty quick. That
Yes.
$12 million upgrade.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
coming up shortly.
Are they doing that now or next year?
Well, they're in the process of now doing some environmental
Mhm.
prep work and some.
Well, our traffic engineer will get all that information.
It'll be
They'll have to embed that into our traffic study and our design out front.
Right, well, while they're tearing it all up, you know, you probably want to
right.
make sure your plan is integrated in there. It'll save you some money.
So back
Absolutely.
when we did a traffic study, which was about this thick, as I recall
Yeah.
it. It wasn't inexpensive, I recall that.
No, that's true.
I think too, one of the things, we've, as this 10, or was 10-year, and then it's 12 or whenever they get to it, I guess. The state, we've talked about different things that we've wanted to ask them, and I know you know what they are, Rob, but I continue to ask to slow traffic down on the way into town. I know that's not popular, but Route 4 is very short in Enfield, and it's very dense at the beginning with Lebanon, and then, we go through it's not Jake's fault that the state made it into a nightmare. So I don't want to call it Jake's nightmare, but there's some challenges in that intersection that have always existed, and the state doesn't always make them better. And we have some experience with that out by the high school, even though it's not in our town, and then up through kind of our commercial district. So I personally continue to ask for traffic calming measures in all forms, complete streets, and I'd like folks to consider sidewalks to make it accessible. You're building it, if you're building this wonderful project, you want it to be accessible to some of our recreation amenities and also to be able to like walk to a decent store. Because who doesn't want to walk downtown to get wine?
Yeah, so if you look at our plan,
Mhm.
not that one, the other one.
Yeah, not the old one. We don't want the old one.
We do have, so we started with walkways in between the buildings.
Mhm.
So if you blow up to the next one, you'll see walkways everywhere, along the parking areas, in between the buildings, along the access way and all that.
I want you to be able to, I want your people to be able to get downtown safely because that's, people do walk up that way and it's very, it comes over the rise of the hill and you come up on them very quickly. And people do some, I'll say
So-
very silly things while they're driving to get around the person who's walking in a very narrow space.
So we have the walkways up along the buildings. And then the last piece though is we did not show walkways on the access road. So if you go to the left, to the previous sheet.
Mhm.
We did not show a walkway going up the hill. Usually the DOT would say, if they're not planning on walkways, don't put a walkway to the street because it'll cause liability issues.
Mhm.
Right.
I don't know how many people walk up and down Route 4, but,
Almost none.
so we didn't know where they would go to, and the DOT is gonna control that. I don't think they have
Mhm.
walkways on Route 4.
I think they're gonna go, just as my personal opinion, as somebody who's lived in this, I'm from here, but I've lived in the city in Boston and Paris. And so people in high-end apartments, they might take a stroll downtown to, either you might go to George's or to Jake's, but also you have excellent access to the rail trail. And I don't think you want to deprive your people of a chance to get to a beach, right? That's free. So just something to think about because we could have a good partnership as a town where we're asking the state at the same time as you, right? Instead of asking you to do it for us, we say to them, while you're ripping up all of this pavement, would you include maybe a wider shoulder in the space? I don't think people are not
Well,
gonna
no, but
walk.
my point of view,
Mhm.
your natural walkway is down Maple Street
But that's fine too.
with
I think
less,
it'll
a
be
lot
You'll
less
have
traffic.
Yes,
That's your natural,
Yeah.
walkway.
And if that's fine, I just want you to be thinking about like a
Right,
way to route your people to things because part of living in Enfield is loving the recreational opportunity here.
Yeah, because otherwise you're kind of sitting on a hill. All the jobs are gonna be to the west
Yeah.
and you'll
Right.
never come downtown.
right.
I mean, I would like them to be a part of our town and to be welcome here the same way.
And there's already a sidewalk right of way down Maple Street.
But
The worst side of ever.
A bike trail down that.
the right of way is
I mean, it's just something I wanna have.
There's a wetland down there.
What wetland, where?
To get from, if you would walk down the power line
Mhm.
and you go past my backyard
Yeah.
and you continue, you go right up to Jake's.
Oh, wait, is that where you land in the one if you lose your boot by the post office? Because I've done that before.
No,
I grew up downtown.
Right at the bottom of my lot
Not
is
easy.
wetlands, because when they put that second power line in, they had to get a wetlands permit for a 4x4
Mhm.
square to put a
I've
post.
lost some boots in there getting to a friend's house.
Yeah.
so
Not good.
on the recreation part of this
Mhm.
discussion, and I completely agree with Kate that you really need to design a way for your residents there to get downtown, either on foot, bicycle.
Mhm.
But,
You don't want them to make it for you, I guess, either, right?
What?
Well, people around here will trek through the woods and pretty soon you'll have something you didn't plan on.
well, yeah, right.
Mhm.
So, the direction provided would solve that, but also, the original plan I noticed had some recreation amenities up on the hill. And I think in order to sell the project to the town, and this is an opinion, having, things for your residents to do up there, private tennis court, private whatever, would be helpful, because that means you're basically not putting, increased demand on the few facilities that we do have now.
If this were a condominium project, we would
Right.
probably have like a clubhouse, swimming pool, tennis courts, and all of that would get spread out over your HOA. Where we have apartments, we weren't planning on any of that recreation for, first of all, liability.
Mhm.
Okay, and then the maintenance and expense of that.
Mhm.
So from the first plan,
You can
we
see it.
saw that.
He has it there.
Okay,
Right.
Mhm.
oh yeah, okay. So from that first plan, we nixed that as part of the affordability of the project and liability.
One thing I think you should consider, and when you're talking to your traffic person, is having a bus stop. And also having them then speak with DOT or whoever's in charge of that. Because the commuter buses go to Hanover. However, they won't stop unless they can pull the whole vehicle off Route 4.
Mhm.
And that's what's needed.
And the closest advanced transit right now, you have a very good point, is at the former Brownies building, which has been torn down.
Right.
And that would involve
And,
walking
and
down
I
the street
did,
again.
I did
Mhm.
speak to Bruce about that, and
Mhm.
he is going to, he said the
He's gonna
town
do
owns a
something.
piece of property there, and it can go on that.
Right. He's gonna put a pole off there.
Yeah, so,
In the previous plan, there had been discussion with the transit authority. And they, at that time, agreed that they would have a bus stop at the bottom. And,
well, it would be nice with 500 people there, all of whom are probably working age, to allow them to
There's, yeah,
to facilitate them being able to take public transit if they want to. And a surprising number of people
actually,
ride
I think that's
bicycles
very
on
important.
Route 4.
Yeah, I think that's very important.
They leave pretty early in the morning.
yeah, we do have a lot of folks with the complete streets, at least we could maybe get it painted in so that we can be more inclusive. I think, as somebody who's lived multiple lives, like both here and in the city, I came back here and I would, hop downtown and ride the bus, because if you work in Hanover, they'll drop you off in front of your office, which means you don't have to park in a lot and hoof it through the slush. It's a big deal, right? To get on the advanced transit, you read your book for like 30 minutes and then they leave you in front of your office building. It's a really nice thing. And would be a great selling point for you, because one of the biggest shortages of housing in this area is the Dartmouth College area.
And the second biggest shortage is parking in Hanover.
I somewhat agree with you about getting rid of the amenities, because in order to have good affordable workforce housing, you actually have to have it be affordable. And if you start adding a lot of amenities, then it's not affordable housing anymore.
And we have a new recreation director. We've expanded since you
So-
came to us last. So we have a full-time rec director. We have a new town manager. And I think there's a lot of focus going into recreation here about, also love of place and how we're using what we have, because there's some very practical people in this town who know you can do recreation without spending a fortune. So I think having some good discussions with maybe you and Kevin about, how we would incorporate,
Yeah, we have some other ideas too that we'll talk about as this.
There was also another reason why that was going to be a town road, was because advanced transits, we were hoping would run a bus up there, do the loop and come back down, but they said they wouldn't afterwards. They said they wouldn't do it because it meant an extra 3 minutes on the run.
Yeah.
So that's why the town road idea was put up there in order for the advanced transit to actually go up into it, but
Yeah.
they weren't gonna anyways.
3 minutes, minute.
Yeah.
Well, if the T could get down to 3 minutes.
Right.
you mean if the T could stop like
Yeah.
having
My
construction,
God.
we could figure out where to
That
go.
was one of the reasons for the
Yeah,
town road,
yeah.
because they won't go on a private road.
Does multi-family dwelling, is that using the property for multi-planning family dwellings? Is that impacted by any of our wetlands regs? Wetlands were a big deal when it was discussed as a different kind of development. Only the wetlands areas were excluded from the count. Acreage count.
Just
So is any of that? Do you remember, Seeley? Do you remember if wetlands regs impact this?
They should. I
Yeah,
mean, if,
there was a big impact for the wetlands, there are a lot of them coming down the hill, and that was a big concern.
Yeah, we can look into
they'll obviously have to comply. That's
that state. right?
it's a state reg.
it's a state, right?
And I think, one of the interesting things, just comparing the was it the third iteration of the old plan to the new, it looks like there's more contiguous building space and then more contiguous land. It looks like it's spread out overall, like, so if a happy little deer is gonna run through, he's not gonna chop through like a piece of a parking lot, another piece of a parking lot, and then another piece. He's gonna get to like run through happy little grass instead.
I mean, the original Laramie Farms was 56 lots,
Yeah,
individual lots.
yeah.
Well,
With no true conserved area. Because they were saying this 15 feet over here were considered conserved because we have to come up with the 56% or
And
whatever.
that's one of the things we didn't love.
That was one of the things, yeah, that a lot of people didn't like with it.
I'd like to point out, just in theory, not technically, but just in theory, the village plan.
Right.
Was kind of intended, this was the intention for that.
Exactly.
Yes.
You're
Which is where
building
you
on,
take 20% of the entire parcel,
Mhm.
right,
set it aside for development, the rest of it has to be put in
conservation.
conservation.
Yeah, yeah,
So another thing to consider, I guess, is, you may get more support from the town, people that gonna like this, if your variance was limited to what you showed here and the rest of the property, you put in some sort of conservation.
Right, we would
Yeah.
do that, and I think, and answer to the wetland, so we have a steep slope area or in the ordinance as well as the wetlands areas in the ordinance.
Right.
And the old design, what they tried to do is, obviously there would be that, I think there's a setback to buildings to the wetland, which they honored.
right.
We have one section that the building would go through the top piece of one wetland, but what it does is it saves us from impacting like 4 or 5 acres across the street, which they did. They pushed the development away from the wetland fingers. But then they had to like go down the hill and, you know, wipe out another 5 acres to put the building there just so that they wouldn't have to ask for the wetland variance. So there's in the wetland ordinance, and we can go through this with staff and everything, because you know better than anybody. It allows special exception for certain work in the wetlands, obviously, for access ways and that type of thing, but not a building. If we have a piece of a building in the upper portion of one piece of wetland, even though we're saving 4 acres of surrounding woodlands, to do it, we would still need to get probably relief from the ZBA. So those are the things when we talked about earlier, there's probably gonna be a ZBA package. And we'd have to explain to the ZBA and show that, and maybe have input from planning board, conservation, whoever, that what we're actually doing is actually less impact, because then we don't have to go chasing ourselves down the hill on the other side of the street to put a building in that theoretically didn't need it. But then we're wiping out so many other woodlands. So, you know, we were studying the plan. We've kind of figured out what they did, how they did it. And so we would have to go through that. There's a steep slope ordinance as well. It's the same, very similar issue with the special exception, or, you know, you're allowed uses for certain things, special exception for other things. And then if you're really into it, then you need to ask for relief, and you better earn it. You better have a good reason why, obviously. So those are the things that we're trying to balance out right now. So that was a good point, but I was still trying to find the section in the ordinance about the density while you guys are talking. For some reason, I couldn't find it. I don't know if you guys know what that was, but I was trying to go through it. And then the subdivision regulations, it says there's a 2,000, I think it's 2,000 feet for a road. But it only applies to a public road for some reason.
Right.
It doesn't probably apply to a private road, but then you would get into the police chief and fire chief and making sure that we have the provisions to get around and multiple ways to get onto a piece of property.
Any idea of timeframe for this project?
Well, if we decide, if the gentleman decided before, we want to get our wetland scientists out there right away. The federal standards, which you go by, have changed slightly on wetlands. We want to make sure that the delineations and everything are fresh and to the state and federal standards. So we want to do that now before we go, you know, into the winter and things like that. We do have updated LiDAR topography that sees through everything, so we have good information, all that. We'd be going through title on the boundary and everything else that you would expect. I think high intensity soils plans, site specific soil plans, obviously. You guys require both by default because of your town ordinances and regs and the state
Right.
regulations. We'd have to reach out to, all the state agencies, and do the required studies and check on the wildlife and everything. We'd like to get started on that pretty early before we, get snow on the ground.
Okay.
I have a feeling that those wetlands probably would change a little bit. Some wetlands are gonna be there. We know they're there. Other ones, we had already did an initial look at it. We were wondering why it was flagged as a wetland. It doesn't meet the criteria, but that's us for us to, and you would review that, obviously, the state would review it, but we want to make sure it's fresh. The state usually doesn't want to look at something that's more than 5 years old. There's usually a 5-year horizon. You probably already know that on test bits and wetland delineations and everything, because wetlands change. They get bigger, they get smaller. It's just a good thing. And it's so long ago, we want to make sure it's done right and reviewed correctly.
Okay, any other questions or comments to the applicants? Okay.
Well, I have a couple quick questions. First of all, do we have a warm and fuzzy feeling about the place? Do we kind of like it? The project?
I
Do
think
we like
so,
the initial layout, how it's going right
yeah. I
now?
like the looks.
I
Yeah.
like barns.
Say? You like barns too?
I've got a barn, I need to take a look at
Oh.
it.
Yeah, I like the.
You might whisper it.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I like the look of the buildings.
Yeah,
I like that you respected the topography and kind of
And-
the general nature of our community.
okay.
You
You
know,
got
I,
it down to 3 buildings and not 7.
I think generally you're headed in the right direction.
Okay,
I'd kind of like to see the future part of the
yeah,
development.
that's gonna be, that's just, I tell you what, I'll be honest with how I'm feeling here. Cause if there's gonna be any zoning changes, and if we come forward with this plan as it is, then we may be modifying this plan later.
Mhm.
Or do I come like it is and then keep my fingers crossed and see what happens? Or do I go to the zoning board and try to get relief from the zoning board on units? So that's something that we have to really sit and talk about. I need to get a little more information on like, what's gonna be required for, the current use taxes, all, the whole picture. So I can put all the numbers together in a performer, so we can see, okay, this is looking good, or we need a little push.
Current
You
use
know,
tax calculation should be there.
So,
Right.
but I'm thinking that, in the worst scenario, okay, that, we would be going no further than what was previously approved.
Right.
That'd be the worst scenario,
Mhm.
okay? And we'd be looking at, it depends. If we could get 3 more buildings, then that'd be as far as it would go. If it's 2, it would be that much less. And if it's 1, it's that much less.
Mhm.
But at the very least, we would be following, we wouldn't go any further. Now I lost the page.
Fourth from the back.
Than what was already done to here.
Right.
But we'll be on all the upper side of the road.
Yeah,
Okay, we'll be all up there. Okay, so for the future, that's why I even wrestled with myself over, do I put this on here? But then I said,
Well, I think it creates good discussion,
yeah,
and
Yeah.
we know where you're coming from, and, we've got a lot of work to do in terms of zoning changes, so.
right.
I think it's
And
valid.
where we're right on the edge of this potential change, it's like,
I mean, you're,
when do we go, or when do we not go, or what,
the earliest that zoning changes would happen would be town meeting of 2024.
Oh, 24?
Yeah,
Not
Well,
23?
no, you can have 23.
well,
Well, not-
little ones,
Oh,
but,
yeah.
but,
But even
That's
the
what I'm
little
saying.
ones might be,
Might make a difference.
Right.
okay, I mean,
like, there are probably some things that we've learned that are small, and this isn't a year we're gonna be asking for a metric boatload of money. So people could probably wrap their brains around some incremental process, I think, maybe if we. I think that
So-
I've had some talks with Ed about just things that we've found where we probably, people over time have had very good intentions and we've probably could fix them now and not necessarily wait to do the full, but there's also quite a bit of, I think, grant type money coming down for zoning, so we could potentially do a larger project, but I wouldn't want them to wait for the larger project.
I wouldn't want them to wait for it either.
Okay, yeah,
Right.
but I think it's very reasonable
I
to
guess we can
expect
do
that.
tweaks, yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, and Ed and Rob will probably have some good ideas as well as you guys, so, you know, having them have that continual dialogue with, you know, we have a list of the things we found yet this year. Who's starting that list?
We're doing that tonight.
Oh,
We're starting.
I was like, where's Kurt?
No,
No, I'm kidding. But you know, we started keeping a running, we wish we had known this would happen type list, you know, I mean,
Okay.
it's a continuous improvement project process.
All right. So I think to answer your question on the future thing, I mean, we don't know what it's gonna be, but we would still stay in line with that plan.
Yeah,
The buildings will be on the upper side of the hill, but we wouldn't be at any time going any further than what was previously done. I mean, that's the best answer I could give you at the time for what the
Okay.
future is.
all right.
All right?
Uh,
That's what,
thank you guys for
Thank you.
coming in.
So,
Um,
yeah, very nice.
we've learned a lot. Hope you guys have learned a lot as well.
Yep, I wrote down a lot of stuff that you people were talking about, and we'll be incorporating that into our plans.
And, you know, come back for another conceptual when you're ready.
Okay.
great. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Very much.
Thanks
Thank
for
you
coming
very
in.
much for your time. We appreciate it.
We get paid a lot. Stop it.
Only Phil.
I'm just-
Only Phil gets paid.
Put that on the bottom, because that,
Yeah.
you don't wanna muddy it up, huh?
Dan, you're-
All righty. Thank you very much for your time tonight.
All right,
Thank
thank you.
Okay,
Take care, Linda. Nice to see you. And nice to see you. It's
Thank you.
been a few years.
It has.
Take care, Jim. Thank you so much.
The good thing you're around and tell us what's really happening, huh?
Thanks so much, Rob.
I know
Linda and I
Linda
have been
too,
here.
but
Linda and I have been getting all the way.
I know, the two people who know all of things.
all this history, all this history.
First round is like.
I believe that the seven was never approved.
I mean,
It was a conceptual.
isn't it irrelevant?
Well, I know, but what I'm saying is that plan was only conceptual.
Okay,
It was never a
never,
plan.
never approved.
They never got response
I'll
on it.
take your word for it.
Yeah.
What was approved?
Hmm?
What was
The
approved?
56 units on the 56 individual lots was the only thing that's ever been approved.
It was approved. Oh, I didn't know that.
56.
Right, and the
Laramie
56,
Farms never got approved? I thought that was.
the Laramie Farms with the 56 units was approved, but it never got sent to the county. It was never
You're talking about
recorded.
Iron Man was approved.
Tired Man was approved. The
This one
7
right
was
here?
never approved. That was a conceptual. There was never an application. I know, but there was never an application that came to us.
It didn't specifically say that Route 4 DOT access was, I thought it failed because of the DOT access. Because I couldn't imagine they'd want to dump 500 or 600 trips a day
Right.
onto Route 4 on the hill,
Very different.
just above a curve.
No.
I didn't think there was the site visibility, and they said, oh, we got site visibility.
Yeah.
But
That's why that
They're-
$12 million DOT thing plays right into this.
Right,
whole
and the
project.
big-
Very
The other
important.
big
Very
issue they
important.
had with that
Probably
was
have to have
their
a 4-lane
steep
highway
slope was gonna get
across the
steeper
hill there.
because you had to have a
Wouldn't be that
platform
idea.
down the
No.
bottom at Route 4.
yeah,
Because in order to come off, you have to have negative slope going out, and all of a sudden, coming down from the water tower became Rice Road.
and
Going into this hill.
they weren't required to put a big catch basin in
Right.
because so much water was.
Was gonna go,
You
right?
needed the catch
Well,
basin.
none of that has changed, right?
No,
These are challenges they're gonna have
No,
to.
that's what-
These
yeah,
are challenges,
They're
yes.
gonna have to figure it out.
But
Right,
like that recreation space that was flat space that would have caught in route water, that will,
Right.
that's forested. And if it
Right.
remains forested, it's significantly helpful to have it remain
Yeah, they've
forested.
got
So it has,
Stormwater treatment facility.
there
up
has,
there.
anyone who likes taking walks, they have deforested. Let's see, I stood right here
Mhm.
and I looked out
Mhm.
way over here into completely
That's why Maple Street,
treeless area.
that's why Maple Street is so upset.
Well, they were
No, I'm
upset for
talking
a
about the
different
water.
reason.
Well, no,
No.
because the water
No.
came down.
No, not from that.
No.
They were, that hillside's alive with springs. And they have artesians
Mhm.
in their driveways that they don't even drill. The water has so much pressure in the
I
spring
know,
coming down, it
right.
stands up.
Right.
We used to skate in people's front yard, but when it turned into a problem was when it wasn't going out onto the road and it turned into when's the town gonna dig me a ditch and move this water away? And that was a relatively recent discussion we had, so.
And all last summer, people said the sound was just all along Maple Street,
Mhm.
that it was extremely loud. I mean, no more than any logging would be, but it
Right.
was, they found it exhausting, but over the hill, I couldn't hear it.
Well, I think they've got a large project.
Yeah.
That they're shoehorning into a really difficult site. And that it's gonna require a great deal of engineering to make it all work. Not saying that for that reason, I have no.
Right.
There's no reason to not want to see it happen, but it's just back to the site.
But I mean, in New Hampshire a lot of the sites are like this, there's giveaway flood.
Well, I mean, and part of that is, you can buy a piece of land and then figure out what you want to do with it. And sometimes the things you want to do with it just don't fit.
Right.
I'm not saying that that's this, but this is gonna be a challenging project.
Everything looks flat in New Hampshire until you try to build something.
We probably need to cut the discussion on it because it's conceptual and they've left the building.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's a rule, huh?
Well, pretty much.
Okay.
It was their conceptual hearing and we can't talk about it if they're not here.
I can see, Andy Buffet had his hand up on.
Oh, I couldn't even.
Yeah.
No,
Because we had the screen share, we couldn't see
Yeah,
that.
we,
Might wanna.
were we supposed to have asked the
Well, we
public?
shouldn't be talking.
I don't think
Not
that
a
the
public
conceptual,
hearing.
we don't do that, no.
yeah,
Not a
no, I
public
guess we
hearing.
can't do it because we.
Right.
It's
not a
I,
public-
I would
I
like
can,
to
I
ask,
can address a future issue,
Yeah.
which is, what was at least implied and certainly not denied of phase 2 of, at least 3 more buildings and doubling the number of occupants at the next session, next conceptual.
We probably shouldn't talk.
Yeah,
about
we
that.
can't.
Right.
Like what Dan said.
like to kind of get a sense of the board before before they come back for the next conceptual. Would people like to do a site visit? I mean, I don't know the property at all. Some of you folks who live there or who have been there.
up there on my property and look down at this from places.
I feel like they're gonna come back with something more developed and I'd rather wait until the next round and having them work more with the town.
Yeah.
Because they
We
have
don't
to
have
get
an
numbers
application.
and they don't have an application. I think it's much more appropriate to wait.
I was gonna say the same thing. I think a formal site visit's a lot more appropriate once we have a formal application. Right now, we're just helping them with what we see may be zoning issues and those types of things.
I've been up there.
And no,
Are you giving him the work engineer report?
I'd be happy to just show you around. As a new person in town, nothing official.
You need to see her property. That's the most gorgeous spot.
That's a nice spot.
yeah, we'll be working with them to share engineering reports and anything.
Wendy, you're having coffee like on Thursday morning or something?
Or is
Be
this-
there.
Or their.
I would like to come up and see it, okay? I'll be
After
in
they've
touch.
been approved.
Mud boots.
Before their
boots.
conceptual
Mud
planning.
boots.
We share all that. It's all public information.
Blaze orange.
Mhm.
Oh,
Well,
yeah.
I
too.
be careful and.
We don't have-
Anyone who
we don't have
travels
private
with
You might, huh?
deer,
We don't
dead
have
deer
private
is gone
information.
now.
For the
I
most
know that, but don't.
I
didn't know there was a dead deer up there.
Did you?
The town is pushing it.
Uh,
You know what I
Fish
mean?
and Game came by
Okay.
when I was getting dinner.
Okay, folks, we're supposed to be talking about, a few other things. I
I'm
will,
almost dead from being out too long, so I'd love it if,
you want us to wrap up the
I love you
meeting?
guys, but I really, am
Okay.
tired.
But, I love you guys,
Um,
but.
I really am tired.
Okay, master plan, we did some drone aerial photography yesterday. I haven't seen it yet. But, I think probably it's gonna be the foundation for a nice photo library for the town. Honestly, we lost some momentum over the summer, as did our consultants. And I think it's gonna take a little bit to get back into step, but we will get there. We worked on an implementation matrix, or at least the start of it, at our meeting on Monday. So what we're doing is trying to take all of the recommendations from each of the 5 chapters and kind of condense them into a final chapter, which still needs to be worked out, but we're making some progress on it. Old business. Let's see. Not a lot really. New business zoning changes. Let's see if we can throw some ideas together in 10 minutes. And then we can discuss them some other time.
Where is Kurt?
He's not, he's retired, he's traveling,
No, I'm just saying, he was kind of our change
he's
secretary.
enjoying the good life.
Yeah.
He's our new change
The
secretary.
list.
He always has a list, but he's not here, so
I'll be
we
happy
have to do it.
Maybe take that role on,
There we
if I can get a word version of the zoning ordinance.
Okay,
Yeah.
All right, but I have one area I think we should look at, and that is the concept of abandonment, which we ran into with the Conkey Pit. And I think we need to look at, maybe it's just the excavation regulations and the zoning. So I'm not that familiar with all the other documents we have, but that concept of abandonment is not that well defined. You gave I thought, a very good speech about how you interpreted it. But we probably shouldn't leave you hanging out there having to interpret it to the extent you had to. So it seems like we ought to focus on that and harmonize the definition between regulations.
okay. My contribution is we need to settle on a definition of a parking space.
Yeah,
I mean, I think it should be 10 by 20,
Yeah, period, end of discussion.
period, end of discussion, all districts, no exceptions. In the process of rewrites, in some districts, it's 10 by 20, in some districts, it's something different.
9 by 18.
It's sort of all over the place without any rhyme or reason and causes confusion.
Yep.
I guess that's my big one.
Last year, when we were trying to align the road language, and there was much ado about it. We have quite a few lots downtown that could have potentially had a backlot I think as the master plan is showing that development probably should be consolidated in the downtown area, water and sewer. So when we did that, you probably accidentally limited the ability to build on a backlot. Not saying you, but we, right?
Right.
Like, so just
So
something to think
let's look
about.
at that.
Yeah, I just want to think about it and like, did we do that intentionally? Because I feel like maybe that wasn't the intent. It was the outcome of a very good intentional discussion about trying to make the definition of a road
There's three.
Right.
into one definition. I
Right.
think we have another outcome. And I just want to be very mindful of what was our intent and what would we have to do to maybe make the language conform, and we can look at samples from other towns or get some help, I'm sure, but, I guess my personal ask is, I'm so sick of these dumb elephant and tail lots to make them conform, right? Like we keep having folks make these really ugly lots with this little skinny useless piece of land. So like we put somebody here and then we wrap around with a little skinny piece and we go like this and we're like, and then we're like, yay, we got 5 acres and.
Right.
And
Yeah, that's really dumb.
The
I
flag
agree.
lots.
it
Yeah.
drives me, I call them the tail and the snout lots, and I just think
Right.
it's silly, it doesn't serve any great purpose. And I have this feeling that even if we aren't the official adjudicators of a future dispute between neighbors, it's just setting people up for like bad feelings,
Mhm.
ugly, confusing.
One way that's addressed in other zoning ordinances is what's called a shape factor.
Mhm.
And it's basically it's.
We got rid
It's a
of it.
ratio.
We got rid of it
I'm
10
not a big
years
fan of
ago,
it
the
myself.
3-to-1.
Yep.
And we got rid of the flag, and we got basically what you're talking about is what they call flag lots. Staff,
I mean, it's one thing if you buy like another little piece that does
Right.
that, but these are people creating these little, and they're not
Right.
even using them for a driveway or anything, they're just it's
in order
solely.
to have this
It's
frontage.
just to have the frontage.
Yeah, a lot of them are.
Right.
One of them is actually my very lovely, wonderful neighbors let us raise our cows on it because they have absolutely no use for it. Right, and I mean, it's, for us, it's a good use and we get along, but for other people, they get into arguments. And so I just don't see that it's, I don't know how to fix it,
Yeah.
but there's gotta be some way to address it that isn't overly complicated, that's fair and that is more sustainable than what's happening. Cause I just don't think this whole like little habit of making tails on everything is.
Are they subdividing to add on? Is that what you're saying?
No, it's like when you say you have like 100 acres and you have a nice little square and you have a house here, but you want to give kiddo, I'm just gonna say kiddo because it makes it
Right.
easy, right?
Right.
You're very nice parents and you really like your kids, so you're gonna give them a lot. And then pretty soon you're like, I'll just give them a little tail here because they're gonna build here and
Right.
that'll give them the road frontage, right? So we'll get them the road
Because that's
frontage
what it
and the.
is.
Oh, I see.
It's the ability to have road frontage.
And it
You have to
makes-
have X number of feet of road frontage. In order to do that, you gotta cut it here and put the land in the back.
And we're making it so that I think we're just causing a
Right.
cascading problem. It's not to me, a good way to do it.
Dan?
I have one, and we've talked about it. The ability for people to have a second ADU in their house.
Oh, you mean you have 2 sets of in-laws?
You don't have to have in-laws, but you could have,
Cause I'm not.
your
here.
large barn could become an apartment. Well, that's what I mean.
No, I
It
mean,
doesn't- It gives
not
people
mine. yes.
income. It also
Yeah.
becomes affordable housing.
Yeah.
Which is one of the other things.
Right.
And they talked about it tonight, so I'll throw it out
Mhm.
there, which is we work on density.
Yeah,
Mhm.
Dan,
I
I agree
agree.
with you on that, that
I think
ADU
we-
thing, I think.
I've
we
got a
should
large
look at
barn that
that.
I could convert into 2
Yeah.
nice apartments.
Yeah,
What I'd like to see, my understanding is that the state now allows 4. No,
They were working on it.
They're working on it.
Attempted to pass that.
they attempted
Came
it,
within
didn't
11
pass.
didn't happen.
No.
Okay. So 2 is now the limit?
No.
There is no limit.
I would work
Okay.
on that.
I mean,
Right.
I guess I would like to see unlimited ADUs as long as it's within the footprint of existing buildings.
I had talked to Rob once. I
You
would
can't.
be almost in agreement with allowing like one outbuilding, but not
Right.
allowing multiple outbuildings.
Right.
You have a compound on your
Right,
lot.
one outbuilding.
One outbuilding, whatever you
Only-
can fit. I'm not.
And a lot of places here.
Only
have
because the
housing
law
that
says you
considers
can
summer
do it.
house.
The state law says you can have an ADU that is unattached.
Right.
So you could have an unattached and one within the main prince, in either one building, in either building.
And it keeps people from
As
just
long as it
building for the
keeps
sake
within
of building.
750 square feet, is it, or 900?
Or a big old farmhouse could have two
A big old
apartments
farmhouse could have two.
plus the main house.
Yeah,
What about
Exactly.
septic systems?
Well, that's the thing.
that's a limited septic and
The
water.
limit is the
Is
septic.
that
You
in
have
the
to have,
law, though?
you
If it-
have to have a septic that will
Yeah.
go X number of bedrooms. So
Exactly.
that's what they base it
If
on.
it's not attached, they don't let you hook into the same septic because even if like it's a garage with, say, an office over it. And I asked this question recently, so it's something that they're gonna have to have their separate, so they'll still have to
You
follow
can
up.
share a field,
You can
but they have
share
to
a
have its
field.
own tanks.
Tank, yeah. And,
Tag has to
and
be.
often you
I have
can't.
another one that I'd like the planning board to look at. We've had multiples of these lately, but I would like to review the definition of structure and look at the possibility of having a
Oh.
temporary structure. Because we've had a lot of
Is it?
garden sheds and
Yeah.
things that Rob's been working tirelessly on that they haven't set within the regular setbacks, but we don't have a definition for those smaller little outdoor.
Like
things.
gazebo and
Carved out.
This came up
Really?
years ago.
Yeah, it
The
did.
swing set became a structure.
Yeah.
The definition was anything
Yeah.
over $100 of
Right.
material.
that's a bad idea.
And
everything's over. They're like, would you like a 2x4?
I'm looking at the definition of structure right now.
Well, because we made, at one point, it was it was 4x8. Anything over 4x8 has to go
Was a structure if it
to the
cost
building.
Yeah, we have some
100.
small screen gazebos and those things
Oh,
that
yeah.
are sitting on cinder blocks that are considered full structures and they're not
Right.
really big enough. and
Here's,
Right.
I
here's,
think we should
here's,
look at that.
here's our current definition. Any temporary or permanently constructed, erected, placed material or combination of materials in or upon the ground, including but not limited to buildings, manufactured homes, radio towers, sheds, storage bins, storage tanks, portable carports, swimming pools, tennis courts, parking
Tents.
lots, and signs.
That's very restrictive.
Everything.
Right.
It was-
Signs.
So that any temporary or permanently constructed.
Right.
So that's how we got into that whole igloo discussion, eh?
Oh, it is.
Yeah,
And I did have a guy, this is kind of one of our limitations of this.
Mhm.
The guy said, well, what if I put a awning? Because he had built a little
Right.
lean-to on a shed that was in a setback, and I said, no, you can't have
No.
that. You know, what if I built an awning that went out and it doesn't have a leg going down?
Right.
He's
Is
like,
it to do with a set of stairs coming down?
Yeah.
Was it a crystal? Lake?
No.
nope.
We've had multiple.
It's multiple.
Whistler's got a really interesting one where they have air space on one of their buildings. They've got some kind of interesting rules because but it's an airspace type.
Yeah.
We had
Speaking,
one
speaking
last
of
week where-
lakes, is it too much to ask for realistic zoning around the lakes? Cause
Yeah, it
Who's
is.
that consultant we're gonna need to hire, right?
that's not a minor
that's
tweak.
not a minor.
That's not a minor.
But it is absolutely
We
reasonable.
agree.
So
It's reasonable to ask for, and
I'm in R3.
I guarantee,
Right.
I guarantee you it will be in the big rewrite.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, I did a little research on that, Brad. I looked at
There's another thing
Wolfboro,
there,
which is on the
but-
right. And they have a setback that's basically set by the width of the lot on the lake.
Right.
So the more narrow the lot is, smaller the
does-
setbacks.
So
From
does
the road
Marlboro.
or the side?
It's on the, basically the width of the lot as you look at it from the road.
Step back from the road or step back from the bordering property?
Prominent bordering properties.
Bordering property.
So grant funding or
Based
whatever
on
we
the
can
width
get
of
for
the
that, yay, yes.
So I
Yeah.
have very little compliant
There is
building
no compliant
on
on,
my.
there's none on
property.
Crystal
Very
Lake.
little
I'm
compliant.
pretty sure that's
Don't
all
worry about it.
Apology Central.
Yes.
No, I was just saying that. I live on the backside of Crystal Lake. Everything's little,
Right.
not even quarter acres.
Right.
And it's an R2 zone.
I didn't
There's
even
not
know
more
that there
than
was a
2
road
acre
out
lots
there.
there.
I've
Well,
looked,
you're lucky, you're in R two.
I've looked at the town,
Everybody else is in R three.
I haven't looked at
I'm
the-
I'm in R3
Keep it
with
the
a,
zone,
with a point of an acre.
town manager.
1.5 acres.
yeah, lakefront,
that was-
I've looked at zoning regulations where they say the way the lakefront is, that is a zoning area.
Yeah,
And-
that's what I
and-
want to move
and
to.
Right.
One of them had,
No one gets
one of them, I
smaller.
was looking, for- and my son was, he lives in Essex, Connecticut. The oldest part of town, they've got setbacks of 5 feet.
Yeah.
You know, but that's the way it was.
Yeah.
So that's what the zoning regulation
Right.
says for that part of town.
Right.
Then you go to the river one, you have another zoning,
Yeah.
reg, based on what was existing there.
Yeah.
And that just makes a lot of sense to me.
Right, you know, if you're within, say, 500 feet or
I
200
just
feet
wanna pay
of
for
the
that.
shoreline, this is the lakefront district,
Right.
and it has its own set of rules.
Exactly. But
on all
Yeah.
that's what the big money's gonna take.
It'll put the
I'll send you a
ZBA
copy.
out of business.
Yeah, copy.
on all three of them. Mascoma, Crystal, and
Mhm.
Spec Pond.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
So we got, so far, we got, just to recap, we got parking lot.
I think we're done.
Space size of 10 to 20, abandonment, harmonize the definition of roads,
Town can't afford.
flag
overtime.
lots, second ADU or unlimited ADUs, and then definition of structures. Then
Density,
In density.
Density.
what?
Everything.
well, basically the on water and sewer.
Anything on water and sewer, we got in.
Did you want to deal with that in March of this coming year?
Yes,
Maybe,
let's start.
I'd at least like to talk about it.
Let's
I think
try.
it would open things up a lot.
I don't think so. You mean change the acreage on the,
Allow more density, in.
around the
On
lake?
water.
No,
No,
water and sewer.
no.
Water
Water
and
and sewer,
sewer, water and sewer.
Instead of a half acre, take it down to a quarter acre.
Yeah.
And truthfully, I think it should be
Discourage
sewer and have
all
nothing to do with water.
I mean, we
Because
wanted
if
to
somebody,
discourage.
somebody wants to have a well, but they're on sewer.
All that
If
stuff
anything,
around the
that's
lake
better
was
'cause they're
done
not
a
using our
long
water.
time ago.
Oh, we know
All
that.
those
That's hard to bill them.
That's why it went to free.
No, they do
because
it
of the
now.
Impact
They do it
With
now.
just sewer?
of any
Yeah.
more small
They
lots.
don't bill my water use.
That's what happened.
They
But-
build, they have a special one for sewer only.
No.
Like we picked a random number.
They put the water meter on the
And so
well.
All we did was
anytime
make
anybody
more
wants
work
to
for
make
that.
a
Oh,
change,
okay.
Yeah,
I've gotta go to
Did we
ZBA,
talk about that time?
which is expensive.
That shut everyone up,
Hey,
didn't it?
we were listening to you.
I mean, for density, I would almost like to see it based on setbacks of the
Mhm.
lot rather than an arbitrary quarter acre or
Right,
eighth acre
I want
or
someone,
half acre.
I want
know,
someone who's an
keep your
expert on this to
setbacks.
tell me, here's some different things other similar places do, and this is what we would propose for you.
Adopt these.
Well, I mean, no, but I'd like them to give me like an organized package so that I don't have to like go pick random towns and try to figure it out, because I know you guys are all busy people and sometimes you wander into the weeds and you're like, oh, this looks like, I'm not an expert on any of these things, so I'd kind of like to get professional input.
I agree with you, Kate.
right.
On the big question.
And the big question, yeah.
Mhm.
And I think, we're all working, we love our town, like we want to protect our resources, so it's figuring out how to do it and not accidentally making
Yeah, I mean,
another problem.
why I said four per acre, because
Hmm.
a quarter acre lot, 100 by 100, is a nice sized lot in town.
Yes.
Absolutely.
A lot of them are quarter acre.
Well, that's what I mean. That's what they are now.
Boy, by the time you get to half an acre in town, you can
Right.
like, have a pony.
Yeah. And 7 chickens,
I make a
unless
motion,
you're on Shaky Hill Road and then it's free range.
Second. Hey, I got one more thing on the agenda. It says possibility of joint meeting with ZBA and Conservation
Can I-
Commission.
Be that
You guys should know that I sent out an email to both of the chairman of both of those committees. Said that we're going to be working on tweaks for the zoning and invited them to attend our October 12th visit meeting. Either with with a quorum of their members, in which case we would warn it as a joint meeting. Or if they wanted to just send one or two representatives to bring some suggestions that have been approved by a majority of their boards. And that's about it. I haven't had any response. Have you, Rob?
I haven't heard a thing.
But that only went out a week ago.
I
So,
think I would have answered,
I would say we may want to reach out to them. It may be worth.
because they can't
Postponing
respond to
that
everybody,
discussion, but they have
but they
time.
can answer you.
again, Ed,
No, I'm saying.
Say,
but not
it may be
necessarily.
worth reaching out to them, because it may be a postponed discussion if they have not had those formal discussions with their board. I'm sure a few of them have talked about possible changes, but they may not have voted on them. I think Conservation Commission will meet right before then, but
Same with zone.
zoning that too. So they may have.
So put it to the first one in November, because
I would just talk to them and see if that timeframe works.
okay.
I think it's a good idea to work collaboratively.
We get anything else for
Motion to
October
adjourn
12th?
on the table.
There is a
And it's
motion.
been seconded.
And it's been seconded
What to
What
adjourn?
was the
to
motion?
adjourn.
All
Oh,
right,
aye.
motion, aye.
Aye.
Okay, we're adjourned at about 9:10.
Point of information, is there anything for October 12th, other than this? Other than having
Rob, is there
them?
anything?
So it's zoning amendment discussions, unless you.
Okay, there's no, what I'm saying is there's no,
There's no hearings, so.
no hearing.
What's the latest with the conflict?
Haven't heard
Haven't heard a thing.
I got the shell just kind of.
Yeah.
All is quiet on the Western Front.
Did I hear right that he and some of the folks from Eastman are talking?
That one?